Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, July 26th. If you have not joined us before, I am a sales coach and trainer with almost 50 years of experience, and I founded the Sales Pro Network about 4 years ago to elevate the profession of sales, to give salespeople a place where they can hang out, talk to each other, get great advice and coaching. And if you've been with us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. Now, our guest has not showed up yet for today, so we're going to give him another 60 seconds or so. And if not, I'm going to say goodbye. But while we're waiting to see if he shows up, he did confirm, by the way, so I hope he'll be here. And he's a great guy. One thing that you might want to keep in mind is that if you have not already gotten at least halfway to your annual goal for the year, now is the time to take action. Now is the time to reach out, get some help, read a book, go to a seminar, talk to your manager, hire a coach, do something. But you don't want to wait till the end of the year, till it's November or December, and then figure out, oh my goodness, I'm not going to reach my goal. It's too late. So now is the time to do it. I'm very excited because our guest did just show up, and I'm going to bring him up in a second. While I'm introducing him. All right, now we're talking. So this gentleman's podcast features over 800 episodes, and it's ranked in the top 2.5% of all podcasts globally, the top 2.5%. And there's a number of podcasts out there, so that's saying something. He's got an audience in over 100 countries. He's an author of 3 best-selling books. He's an expert on influence and the hidden lessons of failure, and he's the founder of 14 startups. Please welcome today's guest, Matt Brown. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Jeff. Great to be here, man.
It's great to see you. I'm really excited to talk to you. You are this level podcaster, and I'm this level podcaster, so I'm going to do my best to be a professional today. Before I get started with the 1,000,001 questions I have for you, could you maybe give us the 2 or 3 minute background? What brought you up to this point?
Just a lot of failure, really. So as you mentioned, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I build and sell companies. A lot of those companies did in fact fail. And with the podcast, it was just something that I never planned on really having 10 years, which I do now. So the why behind the show was just ultimately to make a difference to business owners, entrepreneurs around the world through information at scale, or sharing information at scale. And so I only wanted to do like 3 episodes, and I was launching a product. I was going to do 3 interviews, and then I just got the bite, or I should say the medium chose me. And it's just been an incredible journey. 10 years later, I look back and I think it's the best, business decision or investment of my time that I've ever made.
Wow. Amazing. Now, one of the things that I know you believe is that everything is the way it is because someone, usually an entrepreneur, changed the way it was. Can you explain that a bit?
Well, it's true, right? I mean, if you think about who really changes the world or who puts a dent in the universe, it's the people who are prepared to take the risk to do something, to change something. And entrepreneurship is all about risk. So, what type of business do you want to build? What type of product do you want to build? Cash flow, risk, teams, hiring people, risk, raising money, risk. So everything about entrepreneurship or building companies is really about risk management. And so when you think about visionaries, which is what entrepreneurs really are, they look at a problem that the world has and then they go out there and solve it. And so if you think about what changes the world, it's problems being removed from society. And so that person or that profile of person or that avatar is usually an entrepreneur.
And how do you define entrepreneur? I mean, I'm a one-man show. I'm an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, are you born one or can you become one? And I think entrepreneurship is something that anyone can do, but it's not for everyone. And so how you define an entrepreneur is really subjective. But for me, it's about someone that's prepared to take a risk and to build something that really matters to the world. If you think about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, anybody that's really become uber successful, even the guys that have built a business to $1 million in revenue a year, these are people who are successful. They've taken a risk at something, and they've gone out there and solved a problem, and the world really cared about that solution. And ultimately, that's what allowed them to leave the kind of legacy or make the kind of impact that they want in the world.
Got it. Yes. And whenever I think of Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, I always think of myself too. Me, those two, right in the same category. But, you're right about risk. While I am a very small company, I work with major companies as well as companies that nobody's ever heard of. But it is a risk every time because in my business, I eat what I kill. Don't kill, don't eat. So that you have to have that willingness to believe in yourself and to take the chance that you actually do have something that people want, need, can use, and that you're able to have conversations with them in a way that some of them want to pay you to do that thing or give them that product, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about Africa, so I'm obviously from South Africa. A lion, on the Great Plains of Africa, he has to eat, right? If he doesn't kill, he dies. And so entrepreneurship is really a mindset first and foremost. It's like, I'm going to do this thing no matter what. There's no plan B, there's only plan A. And if plan A fails, then the only next step is plan A again, but just doing it better. And I think about why businesses fail most of the time. It's because entrepreneurs quit. It gets too hard. They can't afford to pay their rent, or their wives tell them that they must go and get a job because they can't deal with the anxiety or the uncertainty of what it means to be an entrepreneur. So lions always eat. If they don't, they die. And that's really the mindset of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've got it. I often tell salespeople that I'm a very positive thinker. I have a great attitude, but when it comes to my business, I act as if I don't get X, Y, and Z done by this week, I might lose my job. Now, the truth is nobody can fire me, but I'm very positive and I don't live in fear, but I act as if there's this fear that I don't want to go get a real job. That's the last thing I want to do. I love working for myself and I love doing the things I do to help people. So I work as if I had a boss. And if I don't get this done, I'm going to get fired, because the last thing I want is some boss telling me what to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the only certainty is uncertainty, isn't it? I mean, it never gets this. You don't, wake up with the business doing $10 million a year in year 7 and then have zero uncertainty. Like it just doesn't happen. So the trick is to really deal with the uncertainty that comes with building a business, or the uncertainty that comes with taking a risk in anything that you do in business.
And I think part of it is the confidence in yourself that no matter what comes, you're going to work it out. You're going to work through it, around it, over it, under it, whatever you have to do to make sure that you can kill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's always another move. I believe, even when you think that there's nothing left that you can do to save your business, when I've been there many times, there's always another move. And so the trick is to essentially figure out, answers to questions. So if you keep asking different questions and you keep getting different answers, then there's a very strong probability that you should continue with that business. However, if you keep asking different questions and there are no more different answers, then it's probably the right time to think about, closing shop and starting something else.
Got it. About a month ago, you posted something. You said, when you market your product, prospects think you want their money. And when you market the problem, they see that you want to help. So when most people think about salespeople, and that's the audience for this, they think that we're lying, thieving scumdogs who just want to reach our hands into their pockets and take their money. How can we change that by marketing the problem?
Well, the insight here is that people love to talk about their solutions first. So, you've built this new SaaS app or this new AI integrated, custom AI agent thing. And, and while that's sexy and cool, your customers really don't care. So what we find in B2B sales most of the time is that people want to talk about themselves or their solutions first. And the opportunity really is to own the problem. It's a principle of category design. So at our company, we've built something called the Lightning Strike, and that entire system is designed to own a problem for our clients in the minds of their customers. Because if you own the problem better than the competition, you by default become the defining solution in its new category.
Yeah. I love when I hear somebody like yourself saying the things that I actually believe too. So many salespeople make the horrible mistake of thinking that it's all about giving a great presentation. Let me tell you why my company, my product, my service is the greatest thing in the world and why you should be buying it. And if you don't, you're a moron. Now, nobody ever says those words, but that's kind of what you're saying. And the truth is, it's not about us at all. It's all about the prospect and helping them see that what we have is right for them, can solve a problem, and them choosing to do business with us. One of the things I despise is when a salesperson walks in and says, hey, first of all, thank you for your time. And let me tell you why my company is the greatest in the world. It's wrong. It's all about making the prospect the star of the show and really finding out what they're looking for so that you can see if what you've got will serve them. Yes,
exactly. Well, I mean, if you think about a sales meeting, right? So it's a 30-minute sales meeting. How do you spend your time? What do most salespeople do? They spend 5 minutes, so tell us a little about your company and who's your customer, and what is a problem for you in terms of your sales or whatever the case is. And they spend literally 5 minutes of that 30-minute window trying to understand the problem, whereas it should be all 30 minutes should be dedicated to figuring out the problem. And so if you spent the last 5 minutes then saying, well, I think I've got a solution for you that can help you do, or, take the pain away from these 3 things that you said were strategic challenges for you. And in the next meeting, I'm going to present a solution or a proposal or a strategy that's going to help you to see how we can demonstrate solving that problem for you in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And so most sales meetings suck. I mean, the other day I was on a sales call. We were looking for a partner for a particular strategy. And the guy pitched up and he went, so tell me a bit about your company. So, if a salesperson says that, I immediately get my back up, because you should know what my business is. You should know that Showworks Media is an AI publishing and marketing company, right? You should know, based on my website and based on my social graph and the content that I'm putting out, what I'm trying to do. And so most salespeople are grossly underprepared. They just are. And so I said to the guy, dude, you literally are unprepared. Like, you should know what this is. Like, if you just spent 2 minutes before the call looking at my website, you wouldn't waste my time asking me stupid questions that you should already know the answers to. And eventually he goes, oh, well, I'm just trying to, I'm like, no, dude, no. If you're trying to get my money, and remember that in the US, it's a hyper competitive market, there are many other people that sell what you sell, right? Which was like social ads management. And so every prospect is trying to commoditize you from second one. They want to commoditize you because they feel like you're just another salesperson. And so the way that you differentiate yourself, from my experience, is by being prepared. Right. So looking at what, like, you actually, I do a lot of podcast interviews, and you're like very well prepared. You know what content I've been putting out. You know exactly how you're going to structure this engagement. And the same principle stands true. Yes, the context is different. This is a podcast, but a sales meeting is exactly the same. If you come in prepared, I immediately feel that you actually care about me, which goes back to the previous question, which is, talk to me about my problem. Like, know and be prepared before you come in to a sales engagement, because most of your competitors just aren't. They just aren't. And so if you can create a sales experience that's different, that talks to me, that is well prepared, well articulated, you've got great questions before you actually get into the sales meeting, that's how you win. That's how you get meeting 2. That's how you get that sale at the end of the day.
Complete agreement. No salesperson should ever be asking, tell me about your company. The question should be about the problem that you can solve, and finding out what they're doing now to do that, why the problem's there, and all that stuff. And then doing exactly what you just said. Let's have another meeting where I'll come back and share with you how I might be able to help you. The only thing I would change in what you said, in a 30-minute meeting, I'm not going to spend the entire 30 minutes just finding that out. I'm going to spend a little bit of time up front trying to establish some rapport. But then I'm getting right to the questions. And to me, the majority of the time in the sales process is spent in the information gathering stage. But you're right. It's certainly not asking stupid, obvious questions that you can answer by a quick Google search. I mean, fortunately for me, most salespeople are not great at their jobs. Otherwise, I'd be out of business. But they make us all look bad. Sales. My stepfather, who was a career salesperson, said sales is a great career. And it actually is. It's a great career. And he said, here's why. Every day you get to wake up and look yourself in the mirror and give yourself a raise. Then all you have to do is go out and earn it. And you earn it by speaking to enough people and finding out enough information so that you can share with them how you'll solve their problem. And also understanding that not everybody's going to be your customer. Some will, some won't. So what? Move on to the next one. But you've got to be speaking to enough people. I want to move on because you wrote a book called Secrets of the Fail. It's actually #fail. What secrets can we learn from the hidden failures of entrepreneurs?
Geez, so many, man. So basically the backstory to that was I do these series on my show. So we tackle specific things like, failures in business or influence or whatever it might be, or scaling startups. And so in this particular case, if you look at LinkedIn and you're scrolling down the timeline, like, what do you see? It's like everybody's so successful. It's like, well, we've just won this account. This person's just got this new job. This company's just merged with this one. This company's just been acquired. And, I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I know that in business and entrepreneurship, like behind all of that success is an incredible amount of failure. And I think that we celebrate success more than we do failure. But actually, to become successful, you have to fail many, many times over. And so the strategy or the idea behind that particular series was to uncover these failures and to cover the lessons, to uncover, well, how did you overcome that, that incredibly challenging time? So I did about 150 interviews with CEOs of around $10 billion companies, all about their biggest failures. And going back to mindset and things like that, I think one of the key sort of takeaways for me was that failure is a prerequisite to success, and that as a community of salespeople, business owners, business leaders, etc., we should talk more about our failures and celebrate those failures, even internally as a culture, to create a culture that embraces failure or innovation. These are the companies that build the best products faster than the competition. And so the show was very successful. Then I wrote the book off the show. It became a bestseller, but it was all about just letting the world know and painting a counter narrative really to what you see on LinkedIn, that failure is bad. And I think it's something that we learn from school, even in sales. It's like, oh, I lost that deal. I'm a failure. It's like, no, you're not a failure. This is just part of the process. And you need to get to 1,000 no's. Like, I celebrate the no's. I'm like, great. I can get on to the next guy, like to your point earlier. But yeah, it was just about helping the community of business leaders understand that failure is necessary, and that the more you fail, the more successful you become. And these stories were incredible. Some of these companies were, 250 people, private equity firms involved, and then suddenly the market changes. And then that company dropped to 5 people, like literally within 6 months. So there was an IPO on the table, like, you know what I mean? Like just crazy, like life-changing financial freedom opportunities. And then it all, like in a matter of months, just blew up. And then that same entrepreneur just persevered, continued, pivoted the company, raised some capital, and eventually there were 500 people listed on the or did an IPO, like 5 years later. It's like these sorts of things, and it all just talks to the mindset of what it actually takes to be a successful salesperson or business owner today.
Yeah, you said something so near and dear to my heart. Nobody closes everybody, and you're going to hear no a lot. And I always say I have 2 favorite words in sales. Yes is my very favorite, but no is my second favorite. And it's a very close second. I don't know that I love no, but I do know that every no that I get gets me one step closer to the next yes, and that it's going to take a certain amount of no's to get those yeses. And that's one of the things that all salespeople should know for themselves. What are their actual metrics? How many no's equals a yes? Because that's one of the things that allows you to keep pounding through every single day, hearing no, because you know that 6 no's equals a yes, or 10, whatever the number is. So I think too many people, you said something so right on, and it's not just LinkedIn, it's all social media. You look at TikTok and Facebook, it's people on fabulous vacations and driving huge cars and all that stuff. And it's easy for people to think, Jesus, why am I such a loser? Look at the life that everybody's leading. In fact, when I formed this group, this was originally formed as a Facebook group, a free Facebook group called the Sales Pro Network. And I investigated other Facebook groups for salespeople. And every single one of them was the same thing. It was a bunch of people bragging about how many deals they closed, how much money they made, what kind of car they're driving. And I'm like, fuck, that's just not, I mean, look, are there successful people in life? Sure there are, but not everybody. And those successful people almost definitely had to go through a bunch of failures, like you said, to get where they are. I don't remember the exact number anymore because I don't read it anymore, but Forbes magazine comes out with the list every year of their 400 most wealthy people in America. I used to get it every year because I was fascinated. And I don't remember the exact number, but of the people who did not inherit their wealth, in other words, people who created their own wealth and got onto that list, a huge percentage of them had declared bankruptcy at least one time. So it's part of the deal.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, what is the P3 framework? I love acronyms and stuff like that. What's the P3 framework?
Yeah. So it's basically a communications framework, but it can be applied to different types of assets. So one of those types of assets is a best-selling book. And so we produce a lot of B2B books for CEOs and entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And when you start, the process of becoming or writing a book or becoming an author, one of the things most, let's just say, executives do is they focus on information first. And so they want to overwhelm the prospects with information. They want to overwhelm the reader with information and so on. And so one of the things I learned some time ago now was that the structure of information is more important than the information itself. It's the same reason why you can immediately resonate with a Netflix series or hate it. It's because the structure sucks. Or same thing applies to the movie industry and so forth. It's the reason why you can read like 3 or 5 pages of a book and then put it down, and whereas you read another book and you just can't put it down. It's because of the structure of information. The same, by the way, applies to sales meetings as well, or keynote presentations and so forth. So the P3 framework stands for problem, product, and proof. So what's the problem, right, that you are solving? What are the nuances within that problem? What does the data say about the problem? Market insights, trends, things like that, perceptions, what have you. Then product is obviously the product. So how does the product now solve the problem that you've just told the reader or the customer that that they have? And then proof. So we have a mantra at SureWorks Media, which is no proof, no launch. And so proof is, well, demonstrate to me how you have solved that problem for a customer before. And so it's just about the structure of information. I can share one more quick framework that also works really well. It's called care, believe, know, do. So in a sales presentation, give them reasons to care. Well, you said that you have these problems, you want to increase your revenue by this, this, and that, or whatever the case might be. But give them reasons to care first. Then you give them reasons to believe. So tell them, or give them reasons to believe about the care you've just given them. So if they say that, their problem is they want to increase revenue by 10%, well, give them reasons to believe that you can solve that thing. And then tell them what you want them to know. So give them facts about the care and the believe, and then tell them what you want them to do. So if you just follow basic frameworks, like you can communicate better, you can structure your presentations better, you can host a better podcast. And it's a funny thing because, if people want to focus on like the information, like tell me about all these things, but it's like, hang on, you have to structure your interview in a certain way so that it keeps people keeps people's attention. And we're in the attention game first and foremost, So yeah, P3 framework, care, believe, know, do.
Love that. Now you mentioned that you help people write books. Most people think they've got a book inside them. I co-authored too, but we cheated. We used a ghostwriter, which was amazing. This guy's written over 250 books for various people, and he has an amazing ability to write in other people's voice. It's really astounding. But it takes a lot of time to write a book. I think I saw that you said for the average person it takes about 6 months. But you help authors streamline that journey. How do you do that?
Well, it actually takes longer than 6 months. The average book takes between 12 and 18 months to do. And, if you're a CEO or a business owner or whatever, you're an executive or subject matter expert, it takes 12 to 18 months because, you just don't know any better. So like when I wrote my first bestseller in 2015, my podcast was blowing up at the time, and there was this publisher that kept hounding me, like, write a book, write a book, write a book. I'm like, dude, I don't have the time. My businesses were scaling at the time and whatever. And eventually I just, like, some of my other entrepreneur buddies are like, dude, just write the book. So I'm like, fine. So I signed the deal with the publisher. She phoned me 9 months later and she said, Matt, where's the book? And I hadn't written a single word because I didn't have the time to do it. And so eventually, obviously, we did it, became a bestseller. We reached over 1 million entrepreneurs, and it was awesome and whatever. But I swore I'd never write another book again. But then you get the itch, right? And so a best-selling book, not a book, like books are easy, but a best-selling book is hard. And so we only deliver best-selling books because it drives credibility and reputation and trust more than anything else, which is the basis of sales, right? And so I developed a system about 18 months ago that produces a manuscript in about 8 hours. So the old way was, 12 to 18 months of pain dealing with ghostwriters. Thankfully, you had a good experience, but most, people don't. Most ghostwriters can't write in your tone. They don't get the nuances of the story correct. They just, and then they're expensive. And even then, assuming you find a good ghostwriter, you only have the book. So what about everything else that has to go along with that? What about the content marketing? What about the advertising? What about the PR, the podcast tours, blah, 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 blah. And so we've developed a system that basically takes all the pain away, but it's basically based on content first, not the book. So we structure a video production plan around the chapter outline of the book. And then basically we follow some kind of like a podcast process where we interview you and you're basically, vomiting out all your subject matter expertise and what have you, and all the stories and this and that. And then we use a number of prompts. We do a lot of prompt engineering here. We're using different AI platforms for different things. But basically, we take the transcripts from the videos and then we use AGI to essentially produce the manuscript. It's incredible. So it actually marries your tone. It gets all the details around the story and so what's also beautiful about the process is now you've also got your content for your marketing, right? And so then we use again AI to repurpose all sorts of assets and that kind of stuff. We usually produce about a year's worth of content to market a book. And then we launch the thing. We've got a lot of data intelligence on Amazon's marketplace, so we guarantee bestseller status for leaders. And it's an amazing process. Like Secrets of Influence was used, created with that process. Secrets of Veil was used with that process. And I can promise you now, those two books I never ever would have written if I had to sit down and write, ever, like never ever. Wow. And so when you think about impact, which is what books are really about, we're in the impact business. So how do you and this is, by the way, what influence is. It's about the ability of leaders to elevate others. And so impact and influence go hand in hand, and authorship or best-selling books is the vehicle through which you do that.
Amazing. And am I right? I believe you actually guarantee that when you take on a client that their book will be a bestseller, or I think they get their money back. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we actually have offers, become a best-selling author in 30 days or you don't pay. So wow. Yeah, we've got the best delivery model in the US by a mile.
And you, if I'm right, your proven approach to unlock business growth includes authorship and content creation, cold outreach, warm outreach, and digital advertising. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So we focused on the niche of publishing first because we wanted to get traction, or at least create impact quickly. But at the moment, we're actually repositioning the company to extend into AI-driven sales and marketing solutions. So publishing is still part of that, but we're building custom AI agents. I've got Matt Brown AI, which I can talk to you about if you'd like. But there's just so much scope for impact, which goes above and beyond just authorship. So custom AI agents, accelerating, prospect meetings without you being there, reducing outbound sales calls using salespeople, but using AI agents to do it. We're using cold email systems that use AI and multiple domains, and something called the Unibox, which basically manages emails that are inbound from prospects without anybody being there. Yeah, it's just there's so many different use cases at the moment. So yeah, we're kind of moving into a different space entirely, which allows us to create more impact over and above authorship. I still believe everybody, as you said, should definitely write a book at some point. And yeah, it's an exciting time. So it's direct outreach, marketing automation, custom AI agents, blah, 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 AI publishing. And so depending on what the problem is, to our conversation earlier, we'll custom build a solution or a strategy around that problem.
Incredible. We're talking to Matt Brown. We're about halfway through the interview, and we're going to take a 60-second break for a commercial from our sponsor, which is me. Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg, the founder of the Sales Pro Network. For nearly 5 decades, I've been selling, managing, coaching, and training salespeople internationally. And I'm often asked for one-on-one or private coaching, but it does involve a substantial investment. For that reason, I've recently developed the Sales Pro Insider Network community. It works like this. We get together twice a month on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. At the first session of the month, it's you and me, with me taking your questions and giving you the advice and help you need to both prospect and sell more effectively. At the second session of the month, we'll have a guest coach speaking on a fascinating topic that helps sellers like you and me. And of course, we'll do group coaching then too. The best part is the investment is just $27 for the first month, and there's no long-term contract at all. In fact, you can cancel at any time. Go to crushsalesgoals.com. That's crushsalesgoals.com. I hope to see you there. We had a great guest just this past Tuesday night, Michael Leibowitz, who is the mind magnetizer. He helps people craft their message in a way that their prospects actually want to hear it. And this next month's guest is Patty Johnston, who's an expert on eliminating procrastination, and who doesn't need some help with that. If anybody's interested, you can either DM me through Facebook or LinkedIn, or you can go to crushsalesgoals.com and you can register to get a free pass to attend. And we're back with Matt Brown. He's a global business podcaster, an expert on influence, and so many other things. And Matt, I do want to ask you about Matt Brown AI, but before I do that, you help authors go from unknown to bestseller. I mean, is that the process you were talking about before? I mean, what's the secret sauce? I know that some people have ways of buying their way to the top of the list, and I don't think that's the right way. How do you go from unknown to bestseller?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So one of the things that frustrates me quite a bit is you've built a successful company, or you've been in sales for 20 years, or you've got some kind of body of work, right? There's a subject matter expertise that you've learned over a period of time. And so the frustrating part of that for me is when I get, so when I sell my company, then I'll do it. Or it's not the right time for me to write a book, or we're busy raising capital right now, and I don't have the time. And so, it's the same thing, like, when is the right time to start a business? Well, there's never a right time. You just do it, right? And so if you have 3 competitors, and competitor C has written the book, the best-selling book on the customer problem, and the customer knows this, who do you think they're going to choose? Yeah, well, you, right? You're the guy, customer C. And so there's an incredible amount of value in becoming a best-selling author. So the process to become a best-selling author is really not complicated. So when we list a book on the Amazon marketplace, we have a lot of data intelligence. So we can, we know how many sales in a day you need to make to become number 1, to be in the top 10, or whatever the case is. So once we understand that, we basically build a sort of a launch system around the book, which includes a number of components. One of those things is email, another one's Amazon ads, the other one's content, the other one's digital advertising, the other one's newsletters. So depending on what the client has available to them, like some guys are sitting with 10,000 customers or leads within their CRM system. So depending on what assets we have that we can leverage, it's really about knowing, well, where do we need to get to, like anything, right? Where do you need to get to, and then listing the book in the right categories to ensure that you actually hit the number 1 spots. So it's really not that complicated, to be very honest with you. It's just that when you're sitting on the outside and you're just like, well, I want to become an author, like, you just don't know any better. And so when you have a specialist that understands these things and that can guide you and kind of be a Sherpa, if you like, to get you to the top of the mountain, that's really where we come in.
Wow. John Hill, one of our listeners, says, I really enjoy listening to Matt. He makes a lot of sense. I agree, John Hill. You're absolutely right. And you're also right about books. It's amazing how when you hand a prospect a book, that you have almost instant credibility. And I told you I co-authored 2 books. Neither of them are about my area of expertise, which is sales. One is about leveraging your laziness, which is not really about being lazy. The other one's about how to be your own coach. But I've gone on sales calls and just given them one or the other. And immediately people think you know what you're talking about, even though you could be the biggest moron in the world. But that physical book seems to give you credibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best business card you can ever have. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to write 3, right? And that's probably not for everybody, but certainly do one. Like if you're a startup and you have a vision for the future, write a book about that. You can take that book, give it to venture capital firms so that they can understand what it is that you're trying to do or the impact that you're trying to make in the world. I mean, I've got another client of mine, Mike Domano. He runs $1 billion workers' comp company. Well, it's actually a group, employee insurance, etc. So he's looking to raise money from PE firms, but now they've built an incredibly disruptive, nuanced, complex marketplace that is disrupting a $9.7 trillion employment industry in the US, right? So if you have a pitch deck, that's one thing. It'll get you some of the way there. But if you can give the PE firm and the investment principal for a venture capital firm the book that they can read and digest, it just creates like, well, shit, you actually wrote the book on this thing, right? I mean, I've got another client. I can't mention the name because I'm under NDA, but they're basically merging with another massive company. It's listed and what have you, and we're doing a book for her. And when she told them that we were creating a best-selling book for her, they got all excited because they were like, holy shit, if we could add in our story at in the final section of a best-selling book at the time that the merger goes through, that would be awesome. You see, so it's less about book sales. It's like, well, what can you do with it? I mean, we're doing some very interesting things with AI or custom AI agents and stuff. Agents is not really the right word, but basically taking content around the book content itself, all the information from a customer's website, and building an AI agent that can actually talk in multiple languages. So if you've written a book in English, how do you get that book to be consumed in Japanese? If you're a global company, which is actually one of my clients, Simon Taylor, we did this book for him. And so if you're in the scale business, right, and you want to be able to have a platform or a tool that can allow people who are not native English speakers to consume the book, well, you can use AI to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, even like, sending 500 books to CEOs of your dream clients and going, hey, put a handwritten note in there and say, hey, we'd love to start a conversation with you, but we've written the book about the problem that you have. You see what I mean? Yeah. And so once you're a best-selling author, you're like a best-selling author for the rest of time. Like no one can ever take that status away from you. So yeah, I'm a great believer in influence. And so books are one of the ways to do that.
Yep. And you used the phrase a few minutes ago, the guy who wrote the book,
Yeah.
When somebody says, oh, that's the guy who wrote the book, you're automatically accepted as an expert in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sure. You brought this up before, and I did want to ask you about it. What is Matt Brown AI?
Yeah, so it's super cool. I mean, this is the interesting question to ask salespeople specifically, which is, what is your true value? And what answer would you give to that question? And so most of the time when I ask people that question, salespeople, whatever, they usually go, well, our value is in the solution and how it solves that problem. And so if I use the Matt Brown Show as an example of that, if I said to you, Jeff, like, what is my value as the host of the Matt Brown Show? Well, I could interview a CEO and he could pay me $5,000 and for an hour, and he can promote the shit out of whatever he wants. And I could give him reach in 100 countries around the world. And yes, there's some value in that. But what I'm doing is it's about the solution, you see. But the real question is, and it's not something that's kind of directly obvious, but my real value is not in that at all. My real value is in the 850 interviews I've done with these super successful people, like all the secrets of fail stuff. Like, we did this, all the investment shows we've done with the biggest VC firms in the US, etc. So I've got this huge body of work, and I keep going back to that. So if you have a body of work, like think about, well, what could you do to leverage your influence, using that body of work? And so who has time to listen to 850 interviews of the Matt Brown Show? Nobody is. But what we built, which is Matt Brown AI, we've taken all of the interviews, trained the AI on that, all my content, all my thought leadership stuff, all my books, basically everything I've ever done in the last 10 years. And it's free. And so what I'm able to do is scale my influence. So yes, the show is the show, But now what I'm able to do is really scale my influence. I can influence 1 million entrepreneurs through Matt Brown AI who have a problem like, dude, do I need a business plan? Should I should I quit my business? How should I tell a story in the sales deck or whatever? Tell me a story about failure. Like, what's the big whatever. I'm suffering with something. I have a problem that I have. And I need a mentor to do that. So I can't scale my time, but I can scale my body of knowledge. And equally on top of that, going back to the languaging thing, I can influence entrepreneurs in Chinese, Spanish, French, like any language in the world, all through Matt Brown AI. And so it's just the beginning of what I believe is going to be a truly disruptive time, like AI and sales and marketing, all this kind of rubbish. But when it comes to influence and really creating impact, like Matt Brown AI is something that I believe everybody will have in the future. I'm not saying like Matt Brown AI, but I'm saying Jeff Goldberg AI, Elon Musk AI. What if you had, this was actually an idea that Mike phoned me. He's like, dude, I had a dream. I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he's like, I had a dream about your Matt Brown AI thing. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, so what if you had like Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Oprah Winfrey, Einstein, whatever, right? And you trained this AI, right, on all their knowledge, like all the publicly available stuff. And then the ingredient though is not in the training, it's actually in the personalization and context of that knowledge. But then imagine you had a board of advisors. Like, dude, I would kill to have Nelson Mandela give me advice about leadership. Do you see what I mean? And so I think, again, people are not thinking differently about what their value really is. And so we all have an incredible amount of value. We just feel sometimes that we're constrained. We're not able to express that. Or I don't know how to write a book. It's like, cool, well, you don't need to write a book, dude. Like if you've got a podcast or whatever the case is, think about like, well, what if I had my own AI? Like, what would that mean for me? How could I use that AI to market myself, my sales services, my coaching, whatever. So, yeah, I think it's an important question to answer. Like, what do you think is your true value?
Brilliant. And as you were describing that to me, my mind was going, oh my God, what a great business opportunity here. Because everybody, like Oprah Winfrey, you go to Oprah Winfrey and say, hey, let's create Oprah Winfrey AI. I mean, I think people would pay big bucks to have that service from somebody like you who can put that together for them.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think there's a lot of interest there. Like Oprah, don't like Oprah, makes no difference to me. She's amazingly successful and has built herself from nothing up to this multi-billion-dollar corporation, a phenomenon. I'd like to know the secrets of doing that. So great opportunity there. You've used the word influence a couple of times, and I want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, is there a difference between a thought leader and an influencer, or are they the same thing?
No, they're not the same thing. So when I ask, and I actually did, if I ask 10 CEOs, like, what is influence, you'll get 10 different answers. Unfortunately, most of the time when you say the word influence, people go, oh, does that mean influencer marketing? You have to have 1 million followers on LinkedIn or whatever, like across your social graph, or maybe you need to be host of the Matt Brown show, whatever the story is. And so influencer marketing sucks. Like I really fucking hate it. It's probably like one of the things I despise the most, only because it's about self-enrichment. So I paid Jeff Goldberg, $5,000 to jump onto LinkedIn and to promote a product that Jeff Goldberg has never actually used. And so we keep seeing this stuff over and over again. And I understand why marketing teams specifically work with influencers, is because they don't want to pay to build or reach that audience themselves. Unfortunately, it brings with it when anybody, and greed is a real thing, right? And so influencer marketing, some of them, it's like not all bad, but most of it is. And so influence is in the thought leadership space is very, very different. So thought leadership is about communicating original, non-obvious, evidence-based thinking about a problem that your customers have, not the solution, but about the problem. And so again, when you own the problem better than the competition, you'll inevitably win faster than those you're competing with. And so influence is really about shifting perceptions and inspiring actions and driving decision making at scale. So it's funny because like when you, especially in the B2B sales space, it's like people like, well, they go to market with something, like there's a message, there's a sales deck, there's some kind of communication. And most of the time we actually don't understand, or we're actually not aware of what perceptions actually exist in the market. Well, you're too small for me. AI is something that I'll do in 3 years' time. Writing a book is not the right time. Whatever. Like, there's no return on investments in your solution. Or I've tried that before and it didn't work. And so there's all these perceptions, right, that are in the minds of our prospects. And so the way that you shift perceptions, and I share a framework to do this in my book, but basically you have to use evidence to do that. So if you think that it's not the right time, well, then give me evidence to prove that it is the right time. If you think that, there's not going to be a sufficient return on investment, or maybe it's going to take too long to get the kind of return on investment that I'm looking for, well, then give me evidence to prove that you can do it, in less time. And so that's what thought leadership is about. It's about understanding what perceptions exist in the market and then providing evidence to shift those perceptions so that you can inspire an action and drive a decision. And then when you create things like a thought leadership platform, you can actually start to do these things at scale. So instead of trying to reach or shift Jeff Goldberg's perception in a sales meeting, you actually do that, 1,000-fold, 5,000-fold, 10,000-fold. But as long as you understand what perceptions exist and you have evidence to shift those things, then you can start to do that. But if you don't have an awareness of what perceptions exist and you don't have evidence, then you actually have to go out there and get it.
Yeah. When I think of influencer, I think of like a Kim Kardashian. If Kim Kardashian uses your product, there's a certain amount of people that are going to use that product just because she's Kim Kardashian. Yeah. And it's never occurred to me that I want to be an influencer. But the reason I'm so active on LinkedIn is because I am looking to be known as a thought leader in the area of sales and sales management. It's why I post content daily, and it's how I get a third of my business. Not from me reaching out to people and say, hey, do you want to buy some sales training or some sales coaching? It's people reaching out to me saying, hey, I've been following your posts for the last 6 months. You really seem to know what you're talking about. I want to talk to you about possibly doing some business together. But today it seems like everybody wants to be an influencer. For many, it's actually seen as a real job. I mean, kids are graduating college with the goal of how do I become an influencer? And it can be a path to wealth and success. One reviewer of your book said that you've unlocked the cheat codes to influence. In fact, you wrote the book, The Secrets of Influence. Why is influence so important? Or what are some of the cheat codes we can use when we're selling?
Yeah. So this is about leadership, right? So if influence is the currency of leadership impact, then impact is the legacy of that influence. And so there's no real cheat codes. I don't, see myself as unlocking cheat codes. I mean, I can share one story that probably explains why that comment was there, but this is about elevation. It's about elevating others. And so I'll tell you a quick story which will put this whole principle into perspective, and it's probably a little bit of a cheat code. So when I arrived in the US, I lost all my network. This was about 2 years ago, but I did have the show. So basically what I did was I sent 1,000 emails to startups only in California who had raised $1 million or more in the preceding 12 months. And so I sent a very short email going, hey, briefly, my name's Matt Brown. I host the Matt Brown Show, link out to the website. I'd love to interview you for an interview, give you some free PR exposure. I've interviewed New York Times bestselling authors, Steve Blank, Jeffrey Moore, blah, blah, blah. Click here to book your interview. And I went to bed that night. And I was like, email, God. And then I woke up the next morning and I was horrified. I had 190 booked interviews. And for the next 2 months from 9 to 5, all I was doing was just interviewing these visionary founders, right? And after I'd gotten through that whole that hellhound of an experience, because I didn't expect it, but now I'm like, shit, I have to commit to this thing. I asked myself the question, like, well, what is this? Like, why did it work? Because people don't respond to emails. So how do you get like 190 basically sales leads, right? With the sending of one email, it took 5 minutes to draft it. Like, the ROI on that is immeasurable. Like, it's huge. And some of these guys became my clients and stuff. And I landed on this idea of influence. And I was like, well, why influence? What does it actually mean? Like, in the context of that particular tactic, right? Which was, I was giving them a platform to tell their story for free. And as a startup, that's something that everybody wants. I want free exposure. We're building this cool thing. And you know what I mean? But it was really about elevating others. If I'd sent that same email and said, hey, my name's Matt Brown, or, same thing. However, I'd like to interview you and it's going to cost $500. Do you think I would have had any response at all? Probably not. No. And so this is what I mean about influence. If you put yourself in a position to make a positive impact to the people or markets that you care about, and you give before you look to receive, right? The receive thing would have been pay me $500, but I was like, no, let me just give them access to my platform anyway. I mean, what do I stand to lose apart from the time suck of it? But a lot of these guys became my clients, and then they referred me to other people. And so my network became my net worth. And so that's what I mean by a tactic. It's just, using a platform that you own or a story that you own to create value in a way that doesn't actually suck. And I get pitched all the time, like by podcasts, booking agencies and PR firms and all this kind of stuff. And they have no idea how to deal with a show host like Jeff Goldberg. You get pitched too, I'm sure. And it's like, I've got this guy and, his name's Greg Smith and, he's a super ding dong guy and he built this thing and did that thing. And here's 3 things that you can ask him. It's like, fuck off. I don't actually need talent. I don't need talent. I can get access to anybody I want through the show. And yet these people are expecting me to give them something. Do you see what I mean? Like the relationship's incorrect. Like there's chicken and egg here. It's like, well, what are you going to do for me, right, before I consider interviewing this guy? Do you see what I mean?
I do. And I actually got one of those this morning, Matt, and it was actually pretty well written because she said, this guy's name happens to be Jeff also, he'd be a great guest for you. And he has a huge following and we will promote the crap out of this podcast if you interview him. So I thought that was very wise to start out the email that way. Otherwise I would not have read the rest of it or looked at his one sheet that she had attached. So yeah,
dude, we just actually pay people. We just pay people. We pay podcast hosts. Yeah. Going back to the podcast thing, there's over 3 million podcasts now. Over 80% of those don't actually produce any content. Of the remaining 20%, most of those shows are not generating any form of commercial return, like none. It's a time suck. And in fact, there's a whole graveyard of could have been successful shows that are on iTunes, Spotify, etc. And so what we do is we just recognize the obvious truth that people's time is their most valuable resource. What is the average, let's just say, hourly rate of, let's just say a podcast host? Well, it's $0. That's what it costs. That's actually what they're making, nothing. So it's actually just costing them time. Maybe they generate some leads off the back of the show or whatever. But if you just pay them, listen, dude, I'll pay you $250 to interview this guy. Okay, it's taken an hour of your time. See, fractional CMOs don't even earn that kind of money. And then it's like, fuck, that is actually really different. You're rewarding me for my time. You're not expecting me to give you my time for free just because you think you have a story from one of your clients that you want to push on my show, which, by the way, has taken me 10 years to build. So, so I think it's just approaching, and I love the fact that people are actually trying different things, but even like we'll promote the hell out of it. It's like, well, will you though? And what's the real return for me? Well, there isn't any. So anyway, I just think people need to approach platform owners like yourself and myself and many others around the world just differently.
Gotcha. You've interviewed some pretty cool people. I went to your website. Who are some of the ones that you respect the most and why?
Yeah, I get asked that sort of question a lot. It's very hard for me to land on it. I think probably one of the unifying principles, I suppose, is those people who have overcome incredible adversity. I think those sorts of stories really resonate with me and people a lot. I mean, when I started the show 10 years ago, I mean, within 18 months I had an audience in 100 countries. Like, how is it that some guy from South Africa, Johannesburg, has this massive show? It shouldn't have happened. I was just early, right? But the answer to that question is, well, it's the stories, right? It's the stories that were being shared. Like, people are always suffering every single day. And that's why I wrote this book, Your Inner Game, 12 Principles for High Impact Entrepreneurs. And this whole book was basically a recount of the most hardcore stories that at that time I'd only done like 110 episodes at that time. But it was all like these people who just like, holy shit, you did what? And it actually had nothing really to do with business necessarily. Some did, But most of it was about the human capacity to overcome. And like, some of the stories, this one girl, her father owned a small holding, and there was obviously, lions and stuff. And this girl's sitting in the lounge playing with her toys, and the lion comes through the front lounge window, picks her up in his mouth, and then runs back to they call it a kraal, which is like a pen. And just this child's just getting mauled. And eventually, this very brave farm worker basically, got the lion's back off or whatever. But she was like massively, massively traumatized by it, obviously, and physically, let's just say, disfigured and that kind of thing. It was all about her story and how she, went on to do these cool things. I mean, just another guy got arrested for a murder he didn't commit in Zimbabwe. And he was put in maximum security prison in like the most unbelievable conditions. Like, I still can't, like, when I was recording that chapter in the audiobook, I was like, like, I couldn't actually believe that this guy went through what he did. And now he's a professional speaker, and, he tours the world and that kind of stuff. But that's what I mean. It was all about these principles. Like, well, know why. Another guy, Joey Evans, wanted to complete the Dakar Rally. Only 7 South Africans have ever completed that race. And he was on a sort of qualifying event, and they call it the whole shot, which is the first corner. So he gets to the whole shot, loses the front of the bike, and he gets ridden over by the whole field. And he's basically paralyzed. 6 different doctors told him he would never walk again. And eventually he's lying in his hospital bed, and he gets this itch in his right toe. And he's like, fuck, I'm going to start, I'm going to work this toe. I'm going to work this toe. Because that's all he could feel. And eventually the feeling came back through his right foot, and then up to his right leg, and then eventually went over to his left leg or whatever. And he was in hospital for like 6 to 9 months. Eventually came out of that, was on another qualifying event. He hits a cow doing like 100 miles an hour, back in hospital, more broken bones, just like crazy. Then he had to raise money for the Dakar, which is a very hard thing to do anyway. And then he eventually gets the Dakar. This is like years of journey and suffering and pain. And then he's on the penultimate stage, comes over a hill, and this truck, they get different classes of vehicles, but this truck rides over his bike, just like completely destroys it. And he's literally at the end after all of this stuff, and his dream's over. And so he just basically disassembles the bike and carries it literally in the sand. So he's walking, and eventually comes over the hill, and he sees this bike. It's the same model as his, and there's no one around. It turns out there was this French rider who had crashed, got airlifted to hospital. And so there's a rule in the Dakar that you have to finish the Dakar on the motorbike that you started. So there's the frame number that you have. But the bike was the same. So he took the exhaust off the French guy's bike. He took the fuel, the gas tank or whatever, and basically then rode for, I think it was like 18 hours straight with no sleep to finish the Dakar Rally. It's like stuff like that,
Yeah.
And then the book takes the principles of these stories and puts it into the context of business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000,000%. It's those stories of overcoming horrible adversity that just suck you in and make you want. I can't wait to hear the next thing. I mean, I interviewed a woman once, and I've forgotten her name, but I think she might have come from South Africa. When she arrived in America, she was arrested at immigration because they thought she was a prostitute. And I think she spent 18 months in prison, and it took her a long time to get out before she could prove it. And it makes her a great speaker. I know you're a professional speaker, so am I. And I don't want to bring bad stuff on myself, but sometimes I watch people and I go, oh, why don't I have something like that? I mean, I saw a guy once, he's got no arms and no legs, but he's a professional speaker. I'm like, oh, why can't I have something like that? Everybody's going to want to book me for that. And I know another guy, his name is Rohan Murphy. At a very young age, they had to cut off his legs because there was something wrong. But this guy went on, he's now a bodybuilder and a professional speaker. He's done Nike commercials. It's that overcoming adversity that we all get sucked into. And I see we're out of time. I could talk to you all day, Matt. How do people, your books are all on Amazon, right?
Yep.
Okay. And how do people reach you if they're interested in talking to you or working with you?
Yeah, you can go, just Google Matt Brown Show, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. And then the company is called Show Works Media. So it's Show WORX media.com. But yeah, I'm everywhere online, dude. So wherever people are, all good.
Got it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your brilliance so generously. I'll end this as I always do. Gang, please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Matt. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you. Take it easy.